Hey guys, and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. It's been quite a while since we've spoken about Nicola Bulley, and the thing I really want to talk about is really two things. There's been a poll on a particular Twitter feed. I'll show it to you in a moment. That I think is quite interesting, and then also I want to talk about an article that has come out that I kind of wanted to discuss with you guys, get your take on it. The parts of it that resonate, but then the other parts that I sort of feel weird about, right? Please vote in the poll if you haven't. Let's just have a quick look at who's here. Magical Mother, Stephanie. Stephanie says a lot is going on in true crime right now. Stephanie and I had a chat a little while ago about taking the day off. Well, that hasn't quite happened. But this isn't going to be a long show. We'll see how it goes. But I don't really want to do this for more than an hour. So what has been in the news in terms of Nicola Bulley of the past couple of weeks, week or so? Virtually nothing. It's just really been kind of cancelling internet ghouls and calling out internet ghouls. There hasn't really been any substance really to sort of talk about. If you compare the Nicola Bulley case, it's a fairly new case, and compare that to the news coming out, for example, in the Idaho case, it's like chalk and cheese. You could swear the Idaho case is a lot newer than the Nicola Bulley case, right? Okay, so this is the article I want to talk about. I'll put a link in the description. Internet vultures and armchair detectives need reality check. Any of you here read this article? Damn, it's not really showing up the whole thing. Not quite sure how to shorten this. Let's see if I can try and shorten it. See if that'll do the trick. I'd really like you guys to read it on your own time if you can. There we go. There's a shorter version of it. Lorraine says, I haven't read the article. By the way, Lorraine, I saw a lot of your comments on the Van Gogh letters. Thanks a lot for that. Okay, so we are going to talk about this in a moment. Quite strange. On this particular page, it shows up blue. On another one, it shows up red. Not quite sure why that is. So before we talk about that, I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about this poll that came up on the Madeleine McCann case tweets. Can you guys see that? Let's blow it up a little bit. And she says, I do not believe Nicola Bulley fell in that river. What are your thoughts? Look at that, almost 75% saying that. And then by far fewer saying, 13.6% saying that and 11.8% saying that. And although 24,000, almost 25,000 saw this poll, about 2,000 voted, but these are the final results. Does that reflect your thoughts? I'd just be interested to know, does that sort of reflect what you think, that murder is likely and very likely, and then these other two possibilities are extremely remote? Does that also reflect what you guys think? No, it has not been released, no. So that is important to bear in mind, is that the case is in a kind of limbo at the moment. We don't know what the answer is. So I'm certainly not coming here saying it's definitely this or it's definitely that. Nobody really knows for sure what it is one way or the other, which is why it's quite important to look at what people are thinking and saying, right? So we've got someone here who also seems to agree with that. And then there are a couple who say it's the opposite. I actually think it's the opposite. So I'm also part of, looks like, the minority here, And I've kind of got to ask the same question that I asked in the Kylie Rodney case. Why is it that most people seem to be thinking something that I believe is unlikely, illogical, unreasonable, improbable? Why is that? All right. You might say, no, 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 no. It's the opposite. It's very likely. It's very probable. Okay, so who's your suspect? What's the motive? When did it happen? Where did it happen? You know, and I think you can kind of say that that social media kind of hijacked this narrative and turned it into a witch hunt again. You know, in this case, let's find a perpetrator. Could it be this suspect, that one, or that one? And you know, who knows? It could turn out that there is that it is foul play. But what is the answer? Uh, because I think this article kind of addresses this idea that it's not foul play. I don't really know what his position really is, but we're going to kind of go through this article in a moment. See what your comments are. A Magical Mother says, I don't believe there's foul play. Terry, good to see you. Terry says, a very important discussion. Sylvia says, why are we so mesmerized by this case? The majority suspect foul play. Maybe that's why people are mesmerized, because they think it's foul play. Maybe that's why. If people thought it was an accident or something else, would they be paying attention to it? And maybe that's part of the psychology of the content creators. It has to be foul play, otherwise there's no story. Jamie says she did not do it to herself. Okay, well, the authorities seem to think that she was yeah, there's a high risk, or I think they said she had high risk vulnerabilities, right? Okay, so what we're not going to do, this might surprise you, what we're not going to do in this discussion is we're not going to deal with the scenarios. What we're really going to deal with is the reporting on it and just see where that takes us. Okay, so internet vultures and armchair detectives need reality check, right? And I think you've got to think about this article and ask the question: is this a reference to me, or is it somebody else? Somebody else needs a reality check here. You know, if you look at this poll, right? Who needs a reality check here? 74.6%. Do they need a reality check? Do they need a reality check, or do they need a reality check, or does no one need a reality check? In terms of this poll, who would you say needs a reality check? And you know, you can ask the question yourself, be kind of rhetorical about it, or you can say, what is this writer angling at? And it talks about the abhorrent behavior of ghouls claiming to act in the interest of Nicola Bulley's distraught family. And that they say, he says it, this is from Charles Harrison, it says it could have dire consequences if the culprits don't engage in some serious self-reflection. Now, the article then goes on to deal with a couple of things. So I'm going to highlight some of those. It's quite weird. On my other computer, everything shows up red. But anyway, so this is a excerpt from the article. A text overlay on the screen suggests that the 45-year-old was going to say, that's a reference to Paul Ansell, there is no evidence, but then he stops himself. And he's saying the video is trying to suggest that this tiny moment in an interview with a man going through incredible emotional turmoil is proof that he was in some way involved in his partner's disappearance, right? And so he's criticizing basically this video, and the article kind of calls out specific YouTubers. he describes the title of the video. I'm not going to really repeat it here, but basically then deals with this issue of how someone is proving something kind of on YouTube, right? And that then brings us to the next section here, this one. And the writer says, from the Express says, referring to the video and referring to the content, he says, it's cheap, it's crude, and it's cruel, but it has 30,000 views. And then he says, this is the treatment that has been facing Nicola Bulley's family ever since the mortgage advisor vanished at the end of January. Even as their lives fell apart, internet vultures were descending to pick at the pieces. Now, that's kind of where you sort of wonder, isn't that a bit of a generalization? Is everyone an internet vulture? Also, like, what about the mainstream media? Or the mainstream media is just supposed to look the other way? And certainly, I think you could say there are internet vultures, and there are a lot of internet vultures. But is there a difference between the internet vultures and the certain members of the mainstream media, right? And I'm not trying to defend the indefensible in terms of both sides. I'm simply saying, okay, what are we talking about here? You know, if we need a reality check, what reality check do we need to have? Stephanie says, I don't think everyone is. That's quite a good point. So, so my channel was one of the channels that in the beginning expressed the opinion that there could be, I think my very first video was titled something like 12 days missing and a red flag rises, right? Because in a situation like this, often you saw it with the Chris Watts case, you saw it with the Suzanne Morphew case, you saw it with the Patrick Frazee case, and on and on and on. Often in these cases, you also saw it with Gabby Petito. You often have a situation where a woman disappears, and then kind of inexplicably, and then what are you supposed to do? What's your first thought? Or a woman comes to harm, such as you saw in the Murdoch case. What should be the first step? An investigator, a police officer, what is the first obvious step that they should take, right? And then what do you think the answer is to that? So in a situation where a woman, a female, mysteriously either disappears or comes to harm, you don't know anything about the case. You don't know where it's happened. You don't know any of the circumstances. But a woman comes to some kind of harm or disappears, and there's some mystery surrounding that. What is the first natural step you take? What should be the first natural step? What is law enforcement 101? What is the first thing that you should do? There you go, right? You want to talk to the person closest to her. You want to know from that person what is going on with this person. What did they say to you? When was the last time you saw them? And so part of that is getting information about the potential victim. And part of it is also saying, okay, can we exclude you as a potential suspect or not? Right? And you had that in a John Benet Ramsey case. Who is the first natural suspect in the John Benet Ramsey case? Natural, the kind of person that you need to look at first. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's something that does need to happen. Same thing with the Madeleine McCann case, right? Right? What is the first natural step? And so to say that you should, I don't know, stay in your lane and not have that thought, I disagree with that, but on the other hand, I also would say you don't also do the opposite, or not the opposite. You don't also stay in that lane regardless, and becomes a witch hunt. So you may have noticed with this channel that there seems something a little off with Paul, but then pretty quickly we realized, certainly us on this channel realized, actually, you know what, this actually makes sense. Although there's a little bit of a, so that's the other side of it. I don't know whether you can say that Paul's behavior was completely normal and is a grief-stricken person. I personally think he's innocent, but I also think that there certainly are some questions regarding his relationship, and maybe now's not the time to ask those questions, but one does wonder what he knew about his state of mind, right? One just does wonder about that, because that's what the police got from him, was that she was high risk, right? And so, one does sort of have those questions. Please don't make statements like that. Please don't do that. That's not what this is for here. We're not holding court on that right here, right? Helen, I'm glad that you saw that. Yeah, I did put a spider video on Team Peachtree. Go check it out if you're interested. Okay, so mods, please just look at that. I don't really want people making like absolute comments like that. That's not what this video is about either. So let's kind of just go to the next thing I just want to highlight. It's over here. And it's something I've kind of been saying. So in some ways, I really agree with this article. He writes, it reflects a total breakdown in the relationship between social media and reality. And I've been kind of saying that for quite a while now. It's almost like becoming a default narrative. And it's almost also like a wolf crying out in the wilderness. Nobody really cares, because that narrative is what social media want to hear. They want to hear the salacious fiction. They want to hear the dramatic, shocking version. That's the one that people prefer. He goes on to say the internet used to be, let's bring it up a bit bigger. The internet used to be a reflection of real life, sure, a slightly warped, cropped, and filtered one, but a reflection nonetheless. Now, for hundreds online, videos are real life. Police resources, the family's privacy, the reputation of Nicola's partner, all can be sacrificed on the altar of content. I think that's worded quite well, that a lot of people do that. We saw in the Idaho case one particular creator making a lot of sacrifices in many different areas on the altar of content. I will do this, that. I have no scruples. I'm not talking about me, him. I will do all of this because content is king. All of this is to make money, to get clicks, and so on. And so there's absolutely no integrity in that sort of thing. And it's this weird double morality. So the morality is like someone hurt someone else and we care about what really happened. But then the person who's acting as their agent to, I'm going to find the answers for you, then makes up stories. That feeds a sense of righteous indignation, except it's just not true. But does anyone care, or do people just like feeling righteous indignation? So here's another excerpt from the article. Internet sleuths are demonstrably not providing justice for Nicola and her family. They are treating them like pieces of meat. And it's you're going to see the same criticism that we see here. We've actually seen in quite a few other cases as well, where you kind of get the sense that creators have become psychopaths themselves, that they treat a story as content, not real people. Anyway, it says that often they are making things worse. In his apology, a particular creator said that people had come to his house, shared his address on social media, damaged his car. This isn't right, but I wonder if for a moment it reminded him of what happened to St. Michael's on Wire, where Nicola's neighbors were relentlessly, yeah. So you're kind of having this strange sideshow in the Nicola Bulley case. It's like, I would prefer, like in this video, to be talking about what I think happened and to talk about a certain area in psychology, but it's so toxic at the moment that I'm not prepared to do that. And in fact, I was going to cover this a week ago, whatever, and then I've just delayed it by a couple of days. I'm also hoping, hoping that the official report comes out so that it's safe for me to have a conversation like the one that I want to have. But at this point, I don't really feel like it is safe, so I'm not having it. It's not just about safety. It's also just like, are people ready to hear certain things? Then the Express writer also refers to dozens of channels devoted to treating Nicola's story like a content buffet. There have been people releasing books about it, claiming to provide the real truth. This is really, in a way, par for the course in terms of true crime. There's an insatiable demand, and people put their hands up and try and feed that demand, which for some people actually becomes an addiction. So here's another excerpt. Our modern day Sherlock Holmes's quest for justice apparently did not extend to deleting the video, for which he has apologized on YouTube. Fans can still watch, and it refers to that. To be honest, I haven't actually seen that. I don't really know. I haven't seen that myself. I did go to his channel, but from what I could see, there was nothing to see. But maybe I missed something. So, what else does he say? So this is quite interesting, especially, I'm a former journalist myself, and he says, the best and worst thing about the internet is the way it has democratized media. Today, anyone can pick up a camera, call themselves a journalist, and report on a tragedy. In many ways, that's wonderful. The problem is, this includes people who view such events as nothing more than an opportunity for clicks. And with a content stream so vast, how can anyone really distinguish what they should trust? And although that's a very true question, it feels a little rich coming from the person saying this, right? And I suppose some people feel the same way about me if I say the same thing. Who can you really trust in the true crime community? I think some people say, yeah, well, it's fine for you to say that because you want to be trusted, and you want someone else not to be trusted, right? I think some people think that. In the same way, when this reporter says this, I can't help looking at, this is the original article, and you see stories like this on Madeleine McCann. On this page of the Express, you see German girl claims she's found evidence she's Madeleine McCann. That's like the top story. So the top story on the Express right now is that a German girl claims that she can prove that she's Madeleine McCann. Should that really be the top story on the Express? The very next one is girl claiming to be Madeleine McCann issues DNA test update. Should that really be the top story? And this article is all about reality, and these articles here are all about TV shows and so on. Here are some more Madeleine McCann stories. Polish woman claiming to be Madeleine McCann shares new proof, right? And so, yeah, you've got someone criticizing the attitude to reality and the approach to reality, yet on their own platform, there's kind of a question, well, what is the reality in terms of Madeleine McCann? And that's kind of where I've got a bit of a problem with the British media. I've written about 5 books on Madeleine McCann. I've gone to Praia de Luz myself. I've taken notes, spoken to people, measured things, timed things. I've kind of done on-the-ground investigation. And then you see the European Court of Human Rights comes out with a verdict, and the British media don't make a peep. Because essentially what the British media need to do is acknowledge that they have harassed the Portuguese detective. They have insulted him, undermined him, attacked him. They've taken a particular biased perspective, right? And here they are saying, we can take the high moral ground here on how to treat people. What is truth? What is reality? Really? So I really don't know if one can say that mainstream in Britain, mainstream media good, social media bad. I really don't think it's that clear cut. I personally think that as bad as mainstream media is, some people aren't going to like this. As bad as mainstream media is, social media is worse, and I'll tell you why. As bad as mainstream media is, if they really cut a corner or cross a line, they can be sued, right? And they often are sued. In the Madeleine McCann case, you actually did have lawsuits against people making unprovable statements. There are quite a few against Robert Murat, against the Tapas 7, and so on and so on and so on. Whereas with social media, you very seldom see people who are breaking the law, who are defaming, who are crossing lines. You very seldom see those people sued. And I predict that that's going to change. We're seeing that starting to change a little bit. In the Idaho case, we've seen someone that has been sued. And I think the main reason is a nobody making silly statements is in a way water off a duck's back, right? But increasingly, social media is about somebody's, people with 100,000 subscribers, 500,000 or whatever. And so can you really dismiss some of those statements? Can you dismiss social media when you get a poll like this? Can you kind of dismiss that? Where the majority of people out there start believing certain things. So in other words, law enforcement say one thing, right? But no, I believe something else. So think about, for example, the Murdoch case. The Murdoch case has gone to trial right now. And what is the biggest argument from the defense side? Don't trust law enforcement. Well, if you've been you've been watching so many YouTube videos, and it's all about don't trust law enforcement, trust me. I'm a YouTuber, trust me. Law enforcement's lying to you. Law enforcement's corrupt. Law enforcement this, that, right? And then you have a case like the Murdoch case, and you're a juror sitting there, and the defense says to you, law enforcement lied to you. Law enforcement are corrupt. Law enforcement made all of these mistakes. Thus, it's a very easy road from there to beyond. It's not beyond reasonable doubt. Is that right? Is that fair? Is that justice? Because I can guarantee you, if this trend continues, then you could even have the Idaho case. You can have some cases that are pretty open and shut. And all you do is you come in as a defense attorney, you just criticize law enforcement, and there's someone in the jury sitting there that is music to their ears. And are you really prosecuting a case, or are you telling someone what they want to hear? In the John Benet Ramsey case, did law enforcement break into the Ramsey house and do something to John Benet? Did a Boulder police officer do something to John Benet? Boulder aren't the bad guys. In the Madeleine McCann case, is the Portuguese detective the person who took Madeleine out of the apartment? Madeleine, that Portuguese detective is not the bad guy. The bad guy is the bad guy. But it's a very effective defense strategy to say, no, the bad guy are law enforcement. It's kind of a classic defense case, but it's now becoming what everyone wants to hear. Charlotte says lives are destroyed by lies. Yeah. Jamie, good to see you. Do you think so? Would you prefer would you prefer like a war to be covered by social media? Okay. Let's just go through some of the last points here. So in this article, he says the mainstream media has an important role to play in this that arguably it has been shirking. In other words, that mainstream media can kind of provide some leadership. I kind of think what needs to happen is I don't really like to say this, but you kind of need someone to maintain control of the narrative. And when you don't have like law enforcement providing news conferences, when there's a bit of an information vacuum, then social media takes over that. And then I think you've got to ask the question, do they do that responsibly? Do they do that in a way that is useful, meaningful, effective, and helpful, or not? And if the answer is no, then I think you must say, well, someone needs to control the narrative by giving factual information, even if that factual information is, well, we've got no information to share with you at this time, as the Idaho cops did. I think they provide a really good example of how to do that. He goes on to say that the harrowing final statement from Nicola's family made that clear, particularly with its heart-wrenching allegations that ITV and Sky News continued to contact the family after they asked for privacy. ITV have expressed their sincere condolences. So my main sort of criticism of this article is that it seems to assume that it knows the final outcome here. I agree that there have been ghouls and ghoulish behavior, but it also seems to assume that it knows the outcome here, and nobody does. Nobody actually knows the outcome. I've been quite disturbed by the content control, the content police around the Nicola Bulley case, where you had the pendulum going almost both ways. One minute it goes to just curiosity, and then the next there's this weird backlash. I don't know. I was just quite surprised to see it. Yeah, definitely quite surprised to see it. Wisteria says great show. I love your explanations and in-depth reporting. Thanks so much. What happened to your friend, Stephanie? Oh yes, I know about that. Yeah, so you know my position. I've already spoken about Virginia Woolf, and the circumstances are very similar to the aftermath of Virginia Woolf. So I guess we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens there. If we go to this Wikipedia article, it still classifies her cause of death as not been established, right? And here you see all the criticism. Sorry about that. This is from the Wikipedia page. Not been established, and then it highlights already people playing private detectives. Members of the public, particularly users of social media, criticized for traveling to the area and for what the police described as playing private detectives. And ironically, you've had exactly the same thing happening in the Idaho case. They've been talking about people traveling to the funhouse, 1122 King Road, and as a result, they're going to demolish that entire house because of it's become like a true crime tourist attraction, a true crime content hub kind of thing, right? And in a way, doesn't it feel like this is the future of true crime? That how do you shut down the social media monster? How do you prevent the narrative from running away, right? Isn't this the future of true crime? Sherry says, I was floored when the police read Paul's statement after Nicola was found. Okay. So I'm not going to go through all of the details here, but what I found interesting about this case is I'm a dog walker and it's about a dog walker and the witnesses were dog walkers, and perhaps the main witness of all was a dog. And so you had to look into animal behavior and you had to look into the behavior of the river. And funny enough, a lot of the people that were covering this case looked into everything except that. Who cares about the dog? Who cares about the decoys? Who cares about the river? Let's look at everything except that. And funny enough, you've got a similar situation to that in the Murdoch case. You've also got dogs, and what kind of behavior do they have? And yeah. So this was the police report. They graded Bulley as high risk, and that is something that this ignores. This poll ignores the police assessment that she was high risk. And also having specific vulnerabilities due to significant issues with alcohol, right? That's what this ignores. It says who Nicola Bulley was is irrelevant. Her struggles are irrelevant. Her battles and her emotional state, totally irrelevant. It can all be explained very simply. Foul play. Thank you very much. So easy, right? But is who Nicola Bulley was irrelevant? Is what she felt and what she was going through irrelevant? Okay, so I'm not going through all the details here, but it then refers to that you actually had a dispersal order here after social media video makers caused a nuisance and disrupted the investigation. We're hearing this more and more, how social media is actually disrupting an active investigation. And then you also have, similar to the Kylie Rodney case, you actually have private individuals who engage actively on social media and they create a narrative of their own. So, for example, Peter Faulding made the absolute statement, there's no way she's in this river, and social media loved that, and that they ate that for breakfast. He said in his 20-year career, he's never seen anything so unusual. Well, if you'd gone back 82 years to Virginia Woolf, you would have found something like that. he says the area is completely negative. There's no sign of Nicola in that area. And even before Nicola was found, I was saying, how good are human beings at navigating in water? How good are human beings at looking in water? How good are human beings at simply searching asymmetric environments? And I think 75% of people would say we're excellent. People are we've got incredible technology. We can scan the water and see through it like X-rays, and that's how our technology makes us masters of the universe. Does it? Because the opposite to that is maybe we are flawed. We are flawed. The searchers are flawed, and maybe even Nicola. I'm not saying she's flawed, but maybe there was something going on in her life that wasn't perfect. There was something going on in her life that was an issue for her. So in the same way that I'm not perfect and the search wasn't perfect, maybe Nicola Bulley, who seems a bit like a perfectionist and wanted a perfect fairy tale, maybe she was struggling with that. Maybe that was her struggle, right? But when you think of things in a very simple way that it's just so simple, well, then you're not going to think that way, are you? So Yari says, my personal view is that I think it is a long way to go in the tidal river. He was right about that. But was he right about this? And then they talk about the recovery. And I think it just adds to the craziness of the story that a medium ends up finding Nicola. And people have said they refuse to believe that it was a man and a woman walking their dog. Please, we don't want a dog part of this. There's no proof. Can you prove that there was a dog? They don't want to hear that story. And so, I don't know. Doesn't this case remind you a bit of the Kylie Rodney case, where obviously it's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, but if you thought about it on paper, the Kylie Rodney case, and in the beginning you thought, geez, this is what on earth could have happened here? I've got no idea what could have happened here. And whether you believe this or not, if you simply said, what if in the middle of the night, someone who was drunk simply took a wrong turn. Instead of going right, they went left. Right? Just that. Could that explain everything that followed? And nobody wanted to have that conversation. I don't want to believe that she could have made a mistake, because I would rather believe that there's foul play. The murderer is still out there, kind of thing, right? Same with this. I don't want to believe that someone made a mistake, or something else. I'd rather believe the murderer is still out there. What does that say about you, though, if that's how you think? Because social media trains you, programs you to want it to be as shocking as possible, want it to be as sensational as possible. If that's the case, then how good are you at interrogating your own reality? When you are having a dispute with somebody else, do you also try and make it as dramatic, shocking, aggressive, and nasty as possible? Or do you just try and be realistic and practical about dealing with something? So anyway, bottom line, the cause of death has not been established. We don't know what it is. And I wouldn't be surprised if, when the results are established, a poll like this still won't change, right? So in other words, if the autopsy comes out like it did in the Kylie Rodney case, and they say something, then that will then be criticized, and people will still continue believing whatever they believe, because we don't believe law enforcement. So we can make up really any reality we want to. And in the Murdoch case, it was sort of all about, are you a reasonable thinker? That's why we hand this over to the jury, because you're reasonable, because you're sensible. But are you? Are you if you fall asleep in the jury box? Are you if you are told in no uncertain terms, don't discuss the case, and then you do discuss the case? Do people have integrity anymore? And so this is kind of quite a young story. I mean, this happened in late January. We in early March. It's barely a month old. And yeah, you have it. Criticism of the media and Lancashire Police. It doesn't really say criticism of social media. I think that should be there, but it's sort of implicit, right? It's kind of implicit, certainly in terms of this, there was that taking place, right? People pretending to be journalists. You had a particular YouTuber in the Idaho case pretending that certain journalism had occurred in the Daily Mail. He'd actually populated an article that was sort of confirming what he was saying, which made it look like he was getting an exclusive scoop. What I think is not helpful with all this is I want to be talking about the Nicola Bulley case. I don't want to be talking about how the mainstream media are handling or mishandling it. And I don't want to talk about how social media are handling or mishandling it. But the intrusion into these stories now becomes so unacceptable that it is now part of the narrative. It's part of what the police said at press conferences. It's part of what the mainstream media report on. Is that a good thing? What does Bridget say? Echo says, we can think independently for ourselves. That's fair. Bridget says, one thing Paul said that really interested me in the beginning and has become more significant now, in my opinion, he said that the only thing that was different that morning was that everything was done organized that day. That is quite interesting. That is quite interesting. So, I don't know, maybe I'm out of touch, but the police's revelations of Bulley's health details, I was quite surprised that people got so upset about that. I was thinking to myself, doesn't this explain what happened to her? And isn't that what people are asking for? And isn't that why the police shared that? To say, you guys are barking up the wrong tree because we know X, Y, and Z. And then that whole narrative was shut down. How dare you talk about her private struggles, right? But there's something for me weird about how dare you, it's like, let's be sensitive about her health, but then let's cheerlead that she was murdered and try and record, removing her from the river. I don't know, it's like this false sensitivity. I'm not quite sure what to call it. What do you call it? Kind of like a gaslighting, victim blaming thing going on, right? It's not as though they provided very many details. They simply said that she had struggled with alcohol. Is that so shameful to say? If someone said about me that I have trouble sleeping, or that I don't really have alcohol problems, but there've been times I've drunk a half bottle of wine just to when I was writing books. I don't know if I would say you violated my privacy. I think I would say, yeah, it's true. And sleep apnea is a problem for a lot of people. Let's talk about it. Really, can we not talk about mental health struggles. You know, and I suppose you could say there are certain people that don't want to talk about certain things. I suppose one can say that. I suppose I've got a different view of it, because if you think there's a particular thing that happened in this case, then talking about mental health may actually save somebody's life. So maybe it's worth talking about, because social media is all about pretending that everything is hunky-dory. And so because everyone's pretending everything's hunky-dory, we can't actually be ourselves. We can't say, you know what, the struggle is real. And so what does Liesl say? Oh, it's your son's 17th birthday. Happy birthday to your son, Liesl. Take care. Yeah, so I believe that, and I mean, I've covered what I believe is the murder of Vincent van Gogh, is people have a very poor understanding of the opposite to that, what people mostly believe happened to Vincent van Gogh. People have a very poor understanding about it because no one talks about it. The Nicola Bulley case is a really good example of how misunderstood that aspect is, and how unwilling and unable I think people are to talk about it. And I'm not even using that word because YouTube doesn't like it. Please don't use it in chat as well, because it'll probably get flagged. But that story is more common than murder. We talk about murder all the time. And even in the Murdoch case, I believe the prosecution have actually failed to provide a simple, clear explanation for motive. I was watching the second prosecutor, deliver a really good closing argument. I thought it flowed, it was emotional, it was factual, it was compelling. And yet when it came to motive, he kept making excuses, saying, we don't need to give motive. Maybe it's this. Maybe he was angry. Maybe he lost his cool. Terrible, terrible explanations, terrible attempts, clumsy attempts. You know, if anyone should know this case back to front, it's the lawyers. And yet, in a narrative sense, this most important question, why, they can't answer. Well, as bad as we are, collectively, we are answering why. You know, we can cover the Idaho case back to front, inside out. You ask somebody, well, what's the answer why here? Same with all these other cases. What's the answer to why in the McCann case, John Benet Ramsey? And I've attempted to do that, and I think I do it quite well. But so many people are terrible at the why, right? It's a simplistic, well, for example, here, in terms of Nicola Bulley, why did one of these three things happen? Murder. Why was she murdered? I don't know. Why? What is the motive for the murder? No. I just think it's foul play. No, but why? Can you provide an answer to that? And is your answer for murder better than that or that? I've got, I think, a very good why for one of these three. Do you? Does it matter? Does it matter having a why? Or does it matter just being able to say foul play? Or like you just seen the chats going alongside, there are 250,000 people watching murder, and all they can say is guilty, guilty, guilty. Yes, but why? Do you know why? Can you verbalize eloquently why? Otherwise, you don't understand the case that you've been following every single detail. You know, you don't really understand it. You've gotten all of the details, but you don't actually understand the spirit of the case. Why is that? James says that in itself is a madness, that disallowing of even a word being mentioned, yet we are meant to be growing towards great understanding. I kind of understand. I kind of understand where YouTube are coming from, because you can so easily have people having that conversation and may actually push somebody over the edge. That's actually why, right? And so you do want to be careful with that. I don't believe that. I don't. I would not have written 100 books if I felt. You know what? I don't think you can ever understand what's going on in someone's mind. I believe you can. I don't think it's rocket science, to be honest. But maybe it is. Maybe it is rocket science. So let me put up another image. This one. And what makes me quite sad is I feel like Nicola Bulley herself, the person, you know, it's like if you think about whatever the scenario is, we know how it ends. Whether she stepped willingly into the water, or she fell unwillingly into the water, or she was put unwillingly into the water, we know that there was sort of a quiet moment before the police cars arrived, before even the dog walker arrived. There was a quiet moment where there were grey skies up ahead, overhead, and there were birds tweeting, and there was the flow of the river. And nobody had discovered at this point that Nicola was there. And so there was this quiet situation in nature, basically a human grave. And then in the ether, this cacophony of chatter. And up until that moment, nobody knew what had happened to Nicola. And I would submit, because they don't know who she is. And I still feel like this poll is that 75% a reflection of people who knew who Nicola was, or is that 75% a reflection of people who basically acknowledge that they don't know who she is and don't really, I don't want to say don't care who she is, but if you are ignoring the circumstances leading to her disappearance, you're saying, okay, well, that's irrelevant. But what about that? Well, that's irrelevant as well. What about the situation at the bench? Irrelevant. And so all the things that are crucial to the case, irrelevant, foul play. Okay, well then I guess that's what you believe. Is that how court cases work? You just decide what to believe, or should you say, well, that has been proven? Can you say if something's proven, sorry, you didn't prove it to me? Can you say that? Can you say if, yeah, I mean, can you kind of just decide what you believe? Do you get where I'm coming from? And I sort of feel like my community, the True Crime Rocket Science community, the folks who've been with me from like the early books, right? Books like this. And the early days when I was talking about the authentic narrative and the golden thread and all that kind of thing, that's something I didn't like come up with that in the last couple of days or weeks. I've been saying it from the beginning. And that's something we kind of need to hold on to, is a thinking style, right? The scout mindset, a thinking style that seems to be sorely lacking. It seems like social media trains you into a herd mentality. It trains you into witch hunting and barn burning and I'm not sure what all, right? like a tribal mindset. Is that good for a society? Is that good? Is that good for us? Is that good for you? Okay, I'm at the hour mark. That was really my goal. I don't really want to go further than that. I just want to put up one more image. So this one. And let's have a look at chat. So we'll just go through a couple. BG113 says it is down to cognitive ability. Don't read so much into it. Okay. Um, Rough Cover says, okay. Jim Mergel, I think it comes down to trust. Do we trust people in general? Bear in mind kind of how civil society works. If you have law enforcement with an agenda, they're going to get into trouble in just societies, put it that way. Josie says, if you look at the facts, you can easily say that this was an accident. James Houghton says the media regularly engage with the Samaritans. Okay. Erica says, like a puzzle, every piece is important to view the whole picture and gain meaning from what you're looking at, in my opinion. Josie, I did show the weavers on the last Van Gogh letters. So go and have a look at that if you haven't seen it. Yeah, that is true. That is true. It's kind of counterintuitive in the YouTube space, especially in true crime, to think independently, because that's not where the money is and that's not where the views are. So if you kind of sitting on the sidelines and you're a micro channel and you watching any high profile case, and then it's quite simple. You look at a video that's gotten tens or hundreds of thousands of views and you just emulate it. In other words, it's not about the truth, it's about the tsunami of traffic. And in other words, it becomes a self-fulfilling narrative. And that's what I believe has happened with this. That's what I believe has happened with this. Because if you want to say there's no evidence of this, which I don't think is true, there's definitely no evidence of murder. So if you say there's no witness, no one was seen leaving the scene or whatever, which tends to support that or that, well, it doesn't support murder. So if you say none of the dog walkers saw someone running from the scene or anyone that they hadn't seen before or any suspicious activity, you must remember they're like moving, you know, around this track. And so there was like a 10-minute period, the same as you had in the Murdoch case. There was a 10-minute period for someone to do their thing, cover their tracks and go, right? But then did that happen? Okay. Let's do a quick informal poll here. I'm not going to say the words, but if you look at what you see on screen there, if you think it's the top one, write the letter M. If you think it's the second one, write the letter A. And the third one, write the letter S. So let's see how many M, A's, and C's there are. Chelsea says, I think it was a tragic accident. I see a couple of M's. Zenadis has just got here, not sure. Well, I must say I don't really know. There's like all three of them, almost equal amounts of all three of them. I tend to agree with what Victoria says. So if you guys look at all of those letters, which one do you think is the majority? Should we do a quick secondary poll? I'm not sure if it's going to allow me to do that. See if I can quickly do this. Let's see. Start a Q&A. Okay, so let's just see if we can poll it here. M, S, or A. Let's try and get percentages here. Is that gonna? I wonder if it's gonna work. No, I think it's basically the same. I think I'll have to end the poll. So anyway, the coverage of the Nicola Bulley case has been super weird. 49% say that. 6% say completely normal. 33% say a bit of both, and then 12% say par for the course. So most of you say it's super weird. It certainly is in a weird place right now. It's sort of in like a limbo. Okay. So do you guys at least agree that the Bulley case has kind of confounded us? That whether you are right or wrong, there's somebody else that's definitely right or wrong. You know what I mean? So if you think it's whatever it is, you've got around about a 30% chance that you're correct. But that means that if you are right, then 60% roughly are wrong. That's quite a lot of people to be wrong about something, right? If you assume that there's an even split between the three possibilities. I'm not sure if it is, but it's definitely quite worrying in a way. No scream can mean that it was that what she was doing was intentional. Do you guys agree with that? That the fact that there's no scream, suppose you could say, well, we don't know that that's a fact, but she was in an outdoor space and there were people living right there. I suppose you could say the embankment may have muffled a scream, but do you think there was a scream? And if there wasn't a scream, what does that tell you? Antoinette is talking about the police aspect was part of the course. Okay. Thanks for that comment. Good to see you, Artemis. Artemis, you know the name of the rocket launch in America to the moon, that old program is the Artemis program, right? One thing we still don't know is what happened to the keys. Were her keys found in a jacket? Have they not been found? Really, did Artemis launch this morning? That's good news. That's also true, I think. So, yeah, Robin, if you want to make a claim like that, then you've got to explain the intricacies of how she disappeared from the bench area or from the park area. That's an interesting comment. I mean, we have a little bit of that from the Kylie Rodney case, that we don't know exactly. For example, we don't know the vehicle telematics. I don't know if any were recovered, but we certainly didn't find that out. One would imagine that the family would be interested in the story not having any legs going forward, right? In terms of the media or social media. That is possible. That is possible. I saw a detective saying something about how unlikely it was that if she went in the water, that anyway, he made this whole thing. I don't know if you guys saw what I tweeted, but basically, water isn't in a static condition, and certainly not over the course of 23 days. What you see in front of you doesn't stay like that for 23 days. The other thing is, if she fell in unintentionally and injured herself, she may have floated right next to the bank. And so someone looking over the river wouldn't have seen her. You could have a situation like that. That once again is flawed observers, people that just don't notice something. Okay, I think that's as far as I really want to take it. I just wanted to share that with you guys. Yeah, that is true. It's also possible that she had some health situation, a heart attack, a stroke, a whatever. You could even have a complication like she was slightly tipsy and she, lost her balance. So you have that whole gray area. You still have that whole gray area. That's true. Okay, let's just have a look at. Stephanie says she agrees with that. Okay, so Jeff, that's going to be your last comment on this channel. People like you that we really don't want here. We had that in the Kylie Rodney case as well. The whole, she actually never existed to begin with. That kind of thing is the worst of the worst. Really is. Really is. Yeah, that's unfortunately the case. And I'm noticing even with my friends and my friends' families, a convenient attitude to everything. I sort of feel like saying to them, but I know you believe that, but isn't it also that you want to believe that? And that's with regard to major things like the pandemic, climate change, political things as well. It's not whether it's true or not, it's I believe it. And I think kind of going into the future, you can kind of basically, when you meet people, you can basically tell whether you're getting a similar Google algorithm on your phone or not. And if you're not, I don't know whether you're going to be very good friends, because you're going to argue about literally everything. Because the Google algorithm, in a way, reinforces your reality. It's not to say your reality is reality, but the Google algorithm. So, I think Google needs to develop an algorithm where it says, okay, who's this person? Okay, yes, you've got a 60% chance of having a proper conversation with them based on your mutual algorithm. Oh, who's this person? And might just tell you, well, don't bother. Your views are diametrically opposite. And Google is part of that as well, I think. Part of that, creating these tribes of belief systems of different realities. And I would love to see someone like Elon Musk develop like authentic Twitter, and maybe even Google develop authentic YouTube, where they basically use algorithms to filter out fake news, where they literally say, okay, this is demonstrably not true, so that doesn't qualify. I don't know. Like you get a tick for your verified user, you get a I don't know, not a dollar sign, maybe a um, either an asterisk or a hashtag to say you are authentic, or you score so much in terms of Google's True Google, whatever, something like that. Based on I guess. Imagine having court cases decided by AI. There's an aspect to that that's terrifying, and an aspect to that that's maybe reassuring. I don't know. No, no, not at this point. I'm not going to be covering that. Yeah, it does. It does. Artemis says Elon is another awesome South African. I know some people don't like him. Yeah, earn your tick. Wouldn't that be good? Things are changing so quickly, and the true crime community, the true crime space is also changing very quickly. You're seeing people rising from nowhere, like overnight, but it's not a competition. And then you're also seeing, the whole ebb and flow there as well. So definitely it's quite interesting how the landscape is changing. My concern is it improving, or is it becoming like a minefield? Is it becoming um, uglier, nastier, and worse? Is it becoming like a speculation buffet? No, I won't be. No. Echo says I'll fight for my freedom of speech privileges. Okay. Well, there's no evidence of that, and you would imagine they would have found a bottle if there was a bottle. Also, did any of the witnesses see that she was tipsy and that kind of thing? And the fact that she was on a Teams call, you would imagine she's, wanting to. That's what she's focused on. Do you guys agree with that? It does go beyond true crime. This whole conversation goes beyond true crime. I must say, writing books about the Amanda Knox case, John Benet Ramsey, Madeleine McCann, Jodi Arias, even Oscar Pistorius, the whole PR narrative was something that you could tell was by design, right? And you kind of needed to dismiss it and discount it. Yesterday's PR narrative is today's fake news narrative. And if you ask the question, did yesterday's PR narrative succeed in certain cases? Think about the John Benet Ramsey case. is the mainstream view of the John Benet Ramsey case the truth? If you had to go to Boulder and ask the people, what do you think happened here? Do you think that is going to match the national sentiment? If you had to go to Portugal and say, what do you think happened to Madeleine? Do you think that's going to match what the average British person said? So why is that? Why is there this mismatch? Yeah, that's true. Okay. Vic says, first time I've experienced ads in a live. It's kind of sometimes necessary when, like, I don't know, when I do lives, I have 300 people in chat. Some people have 10,000, right? I think I've gotten 4 super chats here. That's kind of why. So if you're complaining about it, there is a method behind the madness. Okay, looks like some people want to talk about the John Benet Ramsey case. So let's do a quick poll of murder, and then I'm going to sign off. Anyone think that murder is going to be found not guilty or hung jury? What do you guys think is likely? We've now heard the both closing arguments. What do you think the likely outcome is there? That's true. That's true. I'm also kind of semi-retiring. You'll notice I'm not going to be covering. I know I've been saying it for a while, but I'm not really going to be covering things the way that I have been. I'm not going to try and be first, and I'm not going to try and cover things exhaustively. Some people criticized my coverage of the Murdoch case when I actually said I'm not going to cover the Murdoch case, but I definitely didn't cover the Murdoch case the way that I've covered cases in the past. The way I covered cases in the past is I tend to write books about them, and I didn't do that in Murdoch or the last half a dozen cases. I'm not planning on doing it in the near future. Linda says hung jury. That's an interesting comment. Ellie says, I'm not watching the Murdoch case. Why is that? Okay. I've got to say, in the same way, I've seen a surprising amount, in my opinion, I've seen a surprising amount of people say that his guilt hasn't been proven. It reminds me of this sort of thing. It's like, wow, we really see things very differently. And it kind of makes me ask the question, what to you is the right level of proof? In other words, what to you is realistic to prove that someone committed a crime? And here you've got someone who's lied about everything and is also at the scene when the incident happens, and but that's still not convincing. I don't know. It makes you wonder. It makes you wonder. So I don't know. I know what I think in terms of the Murdoch case. I got no idea what all the jurors are thinking. So I'm quite nervous in that respect. And that is really the bottom line, is irrespective of the verdict in this case, I think is going to jail, irrespective. Okay. Thanks, Charlotte. Thank you. I will. I am. Okay. Josie says, I enjoy your Peachtree channel. Do you plan on continuing after the Van Gogh letters? Yes, for sure. But the Van Gogh letters probably will go up to 50 and then probably another 10 or 20 at this rate. Sherry says, I feel Alex is guilty, but I want him to be released just so that we can see what he does next. I don't think there's much chance of that. Thanks a lot, Linda. Thanks a lot for that. I must say, I found the case, I found it surprisingly, it is quite complicated, but it's not like you're never going to figure out how all the pieces fit together. I found it surprisingly coherent. Yeah, I think a more complicated case is Laurie Vallow, personally. I don't know if you guys heard that Laurie Vallow's gotten permission to have her trial separated from her husband's, but unfortunate. My peach trees are doing well, but there's a peach tree around the corner, quite an old one that someone sawed down, and I'm pretty upset about that. Okay, that's it from me. I hope you found this discussion worthwhile. I do want to encourage you guys, my core followers, that the conversation we've just had here, we've had it quite a few times. I want you to, when you go into other channels, I want you to be aware of what you're seeing there. Take notes. Say something when you see something that's not right. You don't have to be antagonistic. You don't have to be confrontational, but just let people know that you're not a sheep and you're not a group thinker, right? Because I don't know, there's kind of like a tide that is sweeping everyone along, and I would certainly like to be you guys to be part of opposition to that weak thinking process, that populist psychology where you think what you want to think. And so I just want to encourage you to be make your voice heard. Again, you don't need to be confrontational. You can simply say, don't agree, or what about this, or something like that. Angela, thanks a lot. And thank you, Bridget. Thanks very much, Bridget in Australia. Echo, thanks for staying. Thanks, guys. That's good to hear. I hope the ads didn't bother you, but anyway, it is what it is. I do still plan on doing another video on Nicola Bulley, but I kind of want to wait till official evidence comes out, right? So I know what I want to say. I prepared everything, but I sort of feel now's not really the time. So we'll see how this what do they say? If it ages well or not, we'll see. Okay, thanks for joining me. The folks in England, hope you have a good sleep. Everybody else, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day in the States. See you guys next time. Ciao.